The sky was bright blue on the morning of the big day. Prince William stood in front of a tall mirror. He fixed the medals on his red military coat. They shined in the light coming through the window. His hands shook a little. This was not just any day. It was the day his father would become king. "How do I look?" he asked, turning to his wife Kate. Kate smiled at him. She wore a beautiful white dress with small flowers on it. A silver pin held a see-through veil to her hair. "Perfect," she said, "just like a future king should look." Their 3 children ran around the room. George, the oldest, was 10 years old. He wore a small version of his father's uniform. Charlotte, their daughter, was 8. She had on a white dress like her mother's, with a flower crown on her head. Louis, the youngest at 5 years old, couldn't sit still. He jumped on the couch in his little blue suit. "Louis, please be careful with your new shoes," Kate said. She bent down to fix his collar. "Today is very important. You need to be a good boy." Louis nodded, but kept bouncing. "Will there be cake after?" he asked. William laughed. "Yes, there will be cake. But first, we have to sit through a long ceremony." Outside their window at Kensington Palace, they could hear the crowds. Thousands of people stood along the streets. They waved flags and held up signs. Some had been waiting all night to see the royal family. "It's time," said a man in a black suit who stood at the door. "The cars are ready." Kate gathered the children. She checked their clothes one last time. She fixed Charlotte's flower crown and made sure George's buttons were done right. She wiped a smudge from Louis's face with her thumb. "Remember what we talked about," William told the children. "Today is about great-grandma's crown going to Grandpa. We need to be on our best behavior. Will everyone be watching us?" Charlotte asked, looking worried. "Yes, dear," Kate said, "but just smile and wave. You've done this before." They walked down the long hallway of the palace. The walls were covered with paintings of kings and queens from long ago. William thought about how his father had waited so long for this day. He remembered his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, who had worn the crown for more than 70 years. The family stepped outside. The bright sun made them blink. 4 black cars with the royal flag waited for them. Men in fancy uniforms opened the doors. "Wave to the people," William told the children as they got into the first car. The children waved from the windows. The crowds cheered and took pictures. Police officers on horses rode in front of and behind the cars. As they drove through London, William pointed out famous places to the children. "Look, there's Big Ben. And there's Trafalgar Square." The children pressed their faces against the windows. Louis waved at everyone they passed. "Are you nervous?" Kate asked William quietly. "A little," he said. "It's strange. I'd spent my whole life knowing this day would come, but now that it's here." Kate took his hand. "You'll be next, someday," she said. William nodded. He didn't want to think about that now. Today was his father's day. The cars turned onto the road leading to Westminster Abbey. The huge old church came into view. Its towers reached high into the sky. It had stood for almost 1,000 years. Kings and queens had been crowned there for centuries. William felt his heart beat faster. In just a few minutes, they would walk through those big doors. The whole world would be watching as his father became King Charles II. "We're here," he told the children as the car slowed down. "Remember, best behavior." The car doors opened. The cheers of the crowd grew louder. It was time for their grand entrance. The car doors opened. A rush of noise hit them. The crowds were much louder now. Thousands of people stood behind small fences, waving flags and taking pictures. Police officers in special uniforms kept everyone back. William stepped out first. He stood tall and straight, just like his father had taught him. He turned and helped Kate out of the car. She held her dress so it wouldn't touch the ground. Then the children got out one by one. George came first. He looked serious, like he knew this was not a day for playing. Charlotte stepped out next. She held her head high but stayed close to her mother. Last came Louis, who jumped out of the car with a big smile. He waved at the people right away. "Look at all the people," Louis said loudly. "There must be 1,000,000. "Shay," Kate whispered, but she was smiling. She took Louis's hand to keep him close. A man in a fancy black and gold outfit came to meet them. He bowed to William. "Your Royal Highness, this way please." The family followed him to a small side door of Westminster Abbey. This was not the main entrance that most guests used. It was a special door just for the royal family. Before they went in, William stopped. He turned to his family. "Remember," he said quietly, "walk slowly. Smile." And Louis looked up with big eyes. "Yes, Papa." "Try to stay quiet during the boring parts." Kate gave William a look, but she was trying not to laugh. Louis nodded very seriously. They walked through the door. Inside, it was cool and dark. The abbey was huge. The ceiling was so high it seemed to touch the sky. Colorful light came through big windows with pictures made of colored glass. The floor was stone, worn smooth by millions of feet over hundreds of years. A church worker gave each child a small booklet. "These show what will happen today," he told them. "Follow along if you can." George opened his right away. Charlotte held hers carefully. Louis looked at his for 2 seconds, then handed it back to Kate. They walked down a side hallway. They could hear music playing in the main part of the church. A choir was singing. The sound was beautiful, like angels. "Will we see Grandpa yet?" Charlotte asked. "Not yet," Kate told her. "He's getting ready in a special room. We'll see him when the ceremony starts." They came to a small room where they would wait. Other royal family members were there too. William's cousins, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, came over to say hello. They told the children how nice they looked. Prince Harry was there too, standing a bit away from the others. William nodded to him, and Harry nodded back. A lady brought them water to drink. Another fixed Kate's dress where it had wrinkled in the car. A man with a clipboard kept checking his watch. 5 minutes, he said. William felt his heart beating fast again. In just 5 minutes, they would walk into the main part of the abbey. Everyone would be watching them. Louis tugged on William's coat. "Papa," he whispered, "are you going to be king after Grandpa?" William bent down to Louis's level. "Yes," he said, "but not for a very long time, I hope." "And then George after you?" Louis asked. William nodded. "That's right." Louis thought for a moment. "And then Charlotte after George?" "Yes." "And then me?" William smiled. "Yes, but that's a very, very long time away. You don't need to worry about it." Louis didn't look worried at all. He grinned. "I think I would be a good king. I would make ice cream free for everyone." This made them all laugh. Even George, who had been so serious all day, smiled at his little brother. The man with the clipboard came back. "It's time," he said. The big doors to the main part of the abbey would open soon. Kate straightened the children's clothes one last time. William took a deep breath. They were about to walk into history. The big doors opened. Music filled the air. All heads turned to look at Prince William and his family. The inside of Westminster Abbey was even more amazing than they had imagined. Flowers were everywhere. The smell was sweet in the air. Candles burned, making the gold things shine. 2,000 people sat in rows. They all stood up when they saw the royal family. There were kings and queens from other countries. There were famous actors and singers. There were important people from all over the world. "Walk slowly," Kate whispered to the children. A man in a long red coat walked in front of them. He held a stick with a gold top. He hit the floor with it 3 times. Then he said in a loud voice, "His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, and their Royal Highnesses, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis." William and Kate started walking down the middle path. George and Charlotte walked behind them. A helper held Louis's hand to make sure he didn't run off. The path seemed very long. Red carpet covered the stone floor. On both sides, people watched and smiled. Some took pictures with their phones, even though they were not supposed to. Louis waved at everyone. He even gave high fives to some people who reached out their hands. Charlotte walked with her back very straight. She only smiled a little bit. George looked ahead, trying to be grown up like his father. At the front of the church, they found their seats. The chairs were old and wooden, with red cloth on the seats. They had been used for many royal events before. William and Kate sat in the front row. The children sat next to them. Across from them sat Queen Camilla's family. Behind them were other members of the royal family. William saw his uncle, Prince Edward, and aunt, Princess Anne. They nodded to each other. Louis looked all around with big eyes. The abbey ceiling was so high that it made him dizzy to look up. Paintings in gold covered every wall. Stone kings and queens from long ago stood in little rooms in the walls. "Is that real gold?" Louis asked, pointing up at the ceiling. "Yes," William said. "It's very old gold. It's been here for hundreds of years." "Wow," said Louis. He kept looking up until his neck hurt. Music played for a long time. The choir sang songs in words the children didn't understand. Then everyone got quiet. "What's happening now?" Charlotte whispered to her mother. "Grandpa is coming," Kate told her. "Watch the door." All the people stood up again. The music changed. It became louder and more exciting. The doors at the back of the abbey opened again. King Charles walked in wearing a simple red robe. He didn't have a crown yet. He walked slowly, holding a special stick in his hand. Queen Camilla walked behind him. She wore white, like Kate. Louis waved at his grandfather. King Charles didn't wave back, but he gave Louis a small smile as he passed by. The Archbishop of Canterbury met King Charles at the front of the church. The Archbishop wore white and gold clothes. He had a tall hat and held a big book. "People of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth," the Archbishop said in a loud voice, "I present to you King Charles. Are you willing to serve him?" "God save King Charles," everyone shouted. The sound was so loud that Charlotte covered her ears. Louis tried to shout too, but Kate put her finger to her lips to remind him to be quiet. King Charles knelt down in front of the Archbishop. The ceremony was starting for real now. William felt a strange feeling in his chest. One day, many years from now, he would be the one kneeling there. And after him, George would do the same. William reached for Kate's hand. She squeezed his fingers. The children sat very still, watching their grandfather begin his journey to become a crowned king. The ceremony went on. King Charles stood up and sat down many times. He said special words that kings had said for hundreds of years. The Archbishop put oil on King Charles's head. It was special oil made from oranges and roses. Louis wrinkled his nose. "What's that smell?" he asked a bit too loudly. Kate put her finger to her lips again. Some people nearby smiled at Louis. They thought he was cute, even when he didn't follow the rules. The church was very warm, with so many people inside. Charlotte fanned her face with her program. George sat still, watching everything with wide eyes. He knew that one day this would happen to his father, and then, many years later, to him. A man brought out a big gold ball with a cross on top. Another brought a long stick with a gold top. These were special things that only kings could hold. King Charles held them carefully. "When do we see the crown?" Louis whispered. "Soon," William told him. "Be patient." William remembered when he was a boy at his grandmother's big ceremony. It wasn't a coronation, but a special birthday for her being queen for 50 years. He had been bored and sleepy. He was proud of his children for sitting so nicely. The choir sang again. Their voices filled the huge church. The music was so beautiful that even Louis stopped wiggling for a while. He closed his eyes and listened. Then came the most important part. 4 men in red coats brought out a small table. On it was a pillow. And on the pillow was the crown. The crown was not very big, but it shined so brightly that it hurt to look at it. Diamonds and rubies and sapphires covered every inch. In the front was one huge diamond that sparkled like a star. "Wow," Charlotte said under her breath. Even George looked excited now. He sat up straighter to see better. The Archbishop picked up the crown very carefully. He held it high so everyone could see it. Then, slowly, he lowered it onto King Charles's head. The moment the crown touched King Charles's head, bells began to ring. They were so loud that the floor shook. Outside, cannons fired. The sound was like thunder. "God save the king," everyone shouted. Louis jumped up and shouted, "God save Grandpa." People laughed, but in a nice way. Kate gently pulled Louis back into his seat. William felt tears in his eyes. He quickly wiped them away. He didn't want anyone to see. His father was now truly the king. The crown that had sat on his grandmother's head for so many years was now on his father's head. Now it was William's turn to be part of the ceremony. He stood up and walked to where his father sat on a big chair. William knelt down in front of his father. "I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge to be your helper and protector," he said in a clear voice. "I will serve you with loyalty until the end of your days." King Charles looked at his son with proud eyes. He put his hand on William's shoulder. William touched his forehead to his father's knees, just as kings and princes had done for over 1,000 years. Then he stood up, took a step back, and bowed deeply. As William returned to his seat, he caught George's eye. George looked at his father with new understanding. One day, he would make the same promise to William. Kate squeezed William's hand when he sat down. She knew how important this moment was for him. "Did you do good, Papa?" Louis asked. "Yes, I think I did," William answered quietly. The Archbishop raised his hands. "I present to you King Charles III," he said, "your undoubted king." Everyone stood up. The choir began to sing "God Save the King," the new version of the song, not the one they had sung their whole lives about the Queen. The children stood between William and Kate, singing along as best they could with the new words. As a family, they watched King Charles, now with his crown, stand tall before his people. After the crown was placed on King Charles's head, there was more to the ceremony. Queen Camilla also got a smaller crown. Everyone clapped for her too. The service was very long. Louis started to get tired. He leaned against Kate and yawned. "Is it almost over?" he whispered. "Not yet," Kate told him. "Try to sit still a little longer." William noticed that even George and Charlotte were getting restless. This ceremony had been going on for almost 2 hours now. He remembered how hard it was to sit still when he was their age. King Charles and Queen Camilla moved to different parts of the abbey. They met important church people. They touched special objects. Each thing they did was part of a tradition that went back many hundreds of years. Kate took a small bag from under her seat. She quietly gave each child a mint candy. This helped them stay awake and gave them something to do. Louis looked much happier with his candy. The Archbishop was now reading from a big book. His voice echoed in the huge church. Some of the words were old and hard to understand. Even the adults found it difficult to follow everything he said. Charlotte leaned over to George. "What's he saying?" she whispered. George shrugged. He didn't know either. A funny thing happened next. As the Archbishop was speaking, a small bird flew into the abbey. It circled high above everyone's heads. People looked up and pointed. Louis saw it first. "Bird," he said, louder than he should have. "Look, there's a bird." Some people laughed softly. Even King Charles looked up and smiled. The little bird flew around for a while, then found its way out through a high window. The bird came to see Grandpa become king, Louis said to Kate. "Maybe it did," she answered with a smile. The choir sang another long song. The music was beautiful and filled every corner of the abbey. Charlotte closed her eyes to listen better. She loved music and took piano lessons at home. Next came an important part. King Charles and Queen Camilla went behind a screen. They changed into new clothes. When they came back out, They wore purple robes. The purple was the color of kings and queens. King Charles now sat on a very special chair. It was called the throne. It was old and made of wood with gold on it. Under the seat was a special stone that had been used for crowning kings for more than 700 years. Each important person in the church came up to the throne. They knelt before the king and queen. They said special words. Then they touched the crown and stepped back. William whispered to the children, "This is called paying homage. It means showing respect to the king." George nodded. He was learning so much today about what would happen when his father, and then he himself, would be king someday. Louis was getting very tired now. He tried to be good, but it was hard. He wiggled in his seat and accidentally kicked the chair in front of him. The person turned around, but smiled when they saw it was just a little boy trying his best to be good. Kate checked her watch. The ceremony had been going on for more than 2 hours now. She gave Louis a small pat on the knee to help him stay still. "Just a little longer," she told him. "You're being very brave." Outside, they could hear the crowds cheering. The people had big screens set up so they could watch what was happening inside. Every time something important happened in the Abbey, the people outside cheered loudly. William thought about all those people waiting in the rain to be part of this day. He felt proud of his country and its traditions. Even though some things about being royal were hard, days like today showed why it mattered. The Archbishop raised his hands again. He said a final prayer over King Charles and Queen Camilla. The most important parts of the ceremony were now complete. King Charles II was officially the ruler of the United Kingdom and many other countries around the world. The main part of the ceremony was over. King Charles and Queen Camilla stood up from their thrones. Everyone in Westminster Abbey stood up too. The choir began to sing a happy song. It was time for the king and queen to leave. A man in a fancy coat walked in front of them. He carried a big gold stick. King Charles and Queen Camilla followed him. They walked slowly down the middle path. The king's crown looked heavy on his head, but he walked straight and tall. William and Kate got ready to follow with their children. They would walk behind other important royal family members. "We need to walk in order," William told the children. "George first, then Charlotte, then Louis." Louis frowned. "Why can't I go first?" "Because George is older," Kate said. "That's how it works in royal families." Louis didn't look happy, but he nodded. He understood that there were rules he had to follow. The family joined the line of people following the king and queen. The music was loud and happy now. It was not serious like before. The hard part was over. Now it was time to celebrate. As they walked down the path, people smiled at them. Some people had tears in their eyes. This was a special day that they would remember for their whole lives. Charlotte walked very gracefully. She looked like a small queen. She smiled at people but kept her back straight. George walked like his father, with his hands behind his back. Louis tried to copy them, but he couldn't help waving at people he recognized. When they reached the door of the Abbey, they could hear a roar from outside. The crowds were cheering loudly. The rain had stopped, and the sun was out again. "It's going to be very noisy outside," Kate warned the children. "Stay close to us." They stepped out into the bright light. The cheers got even louder. Thousands of people were packed into the streets. They waved flags and took pictures. Some had climbed up on walls to see better. "Wow," Louis said. His eyes were wide. He had never seen so many people in one place. The royal family got into carriages for the ride back to Buckingham Palace. William, Kate, and their children rode in the third carriage. It was painted black and gold. 4 white horses pulled it. As the carriage moved through the streets of London, people threw flowers. They shouted, "God save the King," and "Long live King Charles." Some people sang songs. Inside the carriage, the children looked out the windows with wonder. The streets were packed with people as far as they could see. "Look at the flags," Charlotte said, pointing to buildings covered with British flags. George spotted some children his own age in the crowd. They were waving small flags and jumping up and down. He waved to them, and they went wild with excitement. Louis waved so much that his arm got tired. "My hand hurts from waving," he said, but he didn't stop. Kate smiled at her children. "You're all doing so well," she said. "I'm very proud of you." William looked out at the crowds. He felt a mix of feelings. He was happy for his father. He was proud of his children. But he also felt a little worried. One day, this would be his coronation, and he would be the one wearing the heavy crown. The carriage turned onto the Mall, the wide road that led to Buckingham Palace. Here, the crowds were even bigger. People stood 10 deep along the sides of the road. They had been waiting all day to see the new king and his family. "Almost home," William said. He pointed ahead to Buckingham Palace. Its flag was flying high. But it was a new flag now. It was the king's flag, not the queen's. The children looked excited. They knew what would happen next. When they got to the palace, they would go out on the famous balcony. They would wave to the crowds, and planes would fly over in a special pattern. It was the part they had been waiting for all day. The royal carriages arrived at Buckingham Palace. Workers in red coats opened the big gates. The horses pulled the carriages into a large yard away from the crowds. Here, it was much quieter. William helped Kate step down from the carriage. Then he helped each child. Louis jumped down and ran in a small circle. He was happy to be able to move freely after sitting still for so long. "Can we go on the balcony now?" Louis asked, pulling on his father's coat. "Not yet," William said. "First, we need to let Grandpa and Grandma Camilla get ready, and we need to fix our clothes and hair." They walked into Buckingham Palace through a side door. Inside, the palace was busy. Workers ran back and forth. Some carried food on big trays. Others fixed flowers in vases. Everyone was getting ready for the big moment on the balcony. A lady took the family to a room where they could rest. There were soft chairs and a table with drinks and small cakes. The children went straight for the cakes. "Just one each," Kate said. "We don't want to get your nice clothes dirty." Charlotte carefully chose a cake with pink icing. George took one with chocolate on top. Louis grabbed the biggest one he could see. "When will the planes fly over?" George asked. The airplane show was his favorite part. "In about 30 minutes, William said, checking his watch. "We should go up to the balcony in 20 minutes. Kate took the children to fix their hair and clean their faces. William talked to a palace worker about what would happen next. There was a certain way everyone had to stand on the balcony. It was all planned out. Soon, a man in a black suit came to get them. "Your Royal Highnesses, it's time," he said. The family walked up a big staircase. The walls were covered with paintings of kings and queens from long ago. Louis stopped to look at one of a king on a horse. "Is that one of our grandpas from the old days?" he asked. "Yes," William said. "That's King George II. He was king more than 200 years ago." They reached a long hallway with red carpet. At the end was a room with big glass doors. Through the doors, they could see the famous balcony where royal families had stood for over 100 years. King Charles and Queen Camilla were already there. They had changed their clothes again. The king now wore a red coat with gold on it. He still had his crown on. The queen wore a white dress and her smaller crown. "Ah, there you are," King Charles said when he saw his son and grandchildren, ready for the big finish. The children ran to hug their grandfather. He bent down to hug them back, being careful not to let his crown fall off. "You sat very nicely in the church," he told them. "I was proud of you all." A palace worker peeked through the curtains at the crowds outside. "There must be 1,000,000 people out there," he said. Louis's eyes grew wide. "1,000,000?" he asked. "That's even more than 100. The adults laughed. Even King Charles smiled. "It's time," said a man with a clipboard. He opened the glass doors. The sound hit them like a wave. The cheering was so loud it made the floor shake. King Charles and Queen Camilla stepped out first. The crowds went wild. William and Kate followed with their children. They arranged themselves in a line. The king and queen in the middle, then William and Kate, then the children. The balcony was high up. From here, they could see down the mall. People filled the street as far as they could see. British flags waved everywhere. Louis waved with both hands. Charlotte did small, perfect waves, just like her mother had taught her. George stood tall like his father, waving in a more serious way. The noise was amazing. People cheered and sang. Some had brought horns that made loud sounds. Church bells rang all across London. Kate bent down to Louis. "What do you think?" she asked. "It's the best day ever," he said. His face was full of joy. William put his hand on George's shoulder. One day, the two of them would stand on this balcony as king and future king. But today, they were just father and son, sharing a special moment. The royal family stood on the balcony. The sun came out from behind a cloud and made the king's crown shine. A man in the crowd below shouted through a loudspeaker, 3 cheers for King Charles. Hip hip, hooray. The crowd shouted back. They did this 3 times. It was so loud that Charlotte covered her ears again. But she was smiling. Louis pointed at something in the sky. "Look," he shouted. "The planes are coming." Everyone looked up. Far away, they could see small dots in the sky. The dots grew bigger. They were planes flying toward Buckingham Palace. "Here they come," William said to the children. "Watch carefully." The first planes were small and fast. They flew in a perfect line. Red, white, and blue smoke came out behind them. The smoke made the colors of the British flag in the sky. "Wow!" Louis shouted. He jumped up and down. "That's the best thing ever." People in the crowd took pictures with their phones. Some pointed and clapped. Children sat on their parents' shoulders to see better. Next came some bigger planes. They flew more slowly. These were old planes from long ago. Some had been used in wars. One was more than 80 years old but still flew well. "Those planes are from World War II," William told George. "They helped save our country." George watched with wide eyes. He loved planes and had many toy ones at home. The last group was the biggest planes. They were huge and made a deep, loud sound. The noise was so strong that they could feel it in their chests. Louis put his hands over his ears, but he didn't want to miss anything. Then came the best part. 9 special planes flew over. They made colorful smoke trails in the sky. Red, white, and blue smoke spread out behind them. The planes flew in a perfect pattern. Together, they made the shape of a crown in the sky. "It's a crown," Charlotte said, pointing up. "Look, they made Grandpa's crown in the sky." Everyone cheered. Even King Charles looked amazed. He had not known they would do this special pattern. The palace had set up a camera to take a picture of the royal family from the front. It would show them on the balcony with the sky crown behind them. This picture would be in history books someday. "Everyone look at the camera and smile," Kate told the children. They all looked at the camera, but at the last second, Louis made a funny face. He stuck out his tongue and crossed his eyes. Kate didn't see in time to stop him. The camera flashed. Louis went back to smiling like nothing had happened. After the planes were gone, the royal family stayed on the balcony for a few more minutes. They'd waved to the crowds. People kept cheering and taking pictures. King Charles turned to William. "Well done today," he said quietly. "You and your family did very well." William felt proud. His children had behaved better than he had hoped. Even Louis had only been a little bit silly. Finally, it was time to go inside. The king and queen went first. Then William, Kate, and the children followed. When the glass doors closed behind them, the noise of the crowd became much quieter. Louis let out a big yawn. All the excitement had made him tired. Charlotte and George looked tired too, though they tried not to show it. "You were all amazing today," Kate told them. "I think this calls for a special treat. Ice cream." Louis asked hopefully. Why not? William said, I think we all deserve ice cream after today. The children cheered. Even on a day when his grandfather became king, ice cream was still the best news for Louis. Inside the palace, a big party was starting. Important people from all over the world were there. There would be food and music and talking. But first, William and Kate took their children to a quiet room. Here, they could have their ice cream in peace. As they sat together, William thought about everything that had happened that day. It had been a day that would go into the history books, and his family had been right in the center of it all. After their ice cream, the royal children changed into more comfortable clothes. Louis put on his favorite blue pants and a sweater with boats on it. Charlotte chose a pretty pink dress that wasn't as fancy as her coronation outfit. George changed into neat blue pants and a white shirt. They all felt better in normal clothes. Do we have to go back to the big party? Charlotte asked. She was tired from the long day. Just for a little while, Kate said. People want to see you and say hello. Then we can go home. The big staterooms of Buckingham Palace were full of people. Kings and queens from other countries stood in groups, talking. Famous people from TV and movies were there too. Everyone wore their best clothes. The children stayed close to William and Kate as they walked through the rooms. Many people bent down to talk to the children. You were so good today, a tall lady with a crown told Charlotte. She was the Queen of Sweden. Thank you, Charlotte said with a small curtsy, just as she had been taught. George shook hands with important men and women. He was getting good at this part of royal life. Louis mostly hid behind Kate's legs, but sometimes he waved at people who smiled at him. King Charles stood in the middle of the biggest room. He still wore his crown, though it looked heavy on his head. He was talking to the President of France. When he saw William and the children, he waved them over. These are my grandchildren, King Charles told the President. They are the future of our country. The President shook hands with each child. He gave them small pins with the French flag on them. Louis put his pin on right away. He was proud of his new treasure. A man took pictures of King Charles with William and George. These were three kings, one who was king now, one who would be king next, and one who would be king far in the future. The picture would be very important someday. After an hour at the party, the children were very tired. Louis was rubbing his eyes. Charlotte leaned against William's leg. Even George looked ready for bed. I think it's time to go, Kate said to William. William agreed. They said goodbye to King Charles and Queen Camilla. The new king hugged each grandchild. I'm very proud of all of you, he told them. You helped make this day special. The family left through a back door of the palace. Their car was waiting. Inside, Louis fell asleep almost right away. His head rested on Charlotte's shoulder. She didn't mind. She was tired too. As they drove away from Buckingham Palace, they could still hear people celebrating in the streets. Music played. People sang and danced. The party would go on all night, but the royal children were going home to bed. Did we do a good job? George asked his parents. You did an amazing job, William said. All of you. You are part of history now. When they got home to Kensington Palace, the lights were low and quiet. The nanny had made hot chocolate for the children. They drank it while sitting in their pajamas. They were too tired to talk much. William and Kate tucked each child into bed. Louis was already half asleep. He held the French flag pin in his hand as he drifted off. Did Grandpa do good as king today? Louis mumbled as Kate kissed his forehead. Yes, he did very good, she said. And now he will be king for a long time. And then Daddy will be king. Louis asked, his eyes closing. Yes, but not for many, many years, Kate said. Now go to sleep, my little prince. In Charlotte's room, the little princess was looking at pictures of the day on Kate's phone. We look like a real royal family, she said proudly. That's because we are a real royal family, William told her, tucking her blanket around her. But we're also just a regular family who loves each other very much. In George's room, the future king was more serious. One day that will be me wearing the crown, he said as William turned off his light. Yes, but that's a long time away, William said. For now, just be George. That's enough. When all three children were asleep, William and Kate sat in their living room. Outside, fireworks lit up the sky over London. The coronation day was ending with light and color. Our children will remember this day forever, Kate said. William nodded. And so will we.